Well, I don't want to admit if that's my first attempt or several, but we hit the audio cue and you're hearing that beautiful music, which means it's time for another week of the Rec Poker Podcast. I'm the lucky guy that gets to host this show, Jim Reed, Bluffsterini in the home games, and at Hold'em_Steelers on Twitter. And I am lucky enough to be joined by this wonderful group of Rec Poker wizards, and we're going to talk about some hands today. First, I just want to introduce our sponsors, the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, and website AMP. Now, before we get into it, why don't the panel introduce themselves? Regular members, why don't you go first? Who all's here, and how can the Rec Poker Nation find you? Alphabetically.
Oh,
I'm
you didn't
John
interrupt John,
Somsky.
did you?
Poker Geek MN everywhere.
I'm Rob Washington. I'm a Radman 50 everywhere.
And they are everywhere. If you've been to rec.poker, you've seen them in the forums, in the home games. You see them in the OPAs. They're here on the podcast. And another friendly face that's been showing up more and more lately is my Canuckian friend, Ben, who posts as Jammin96. Ben, welcome to the show. Where can Rec Poker Nation reach you?
Hey guys, it's great to be here. I'm Jammin96 in the forums. You see me as East Coast Bidder in the home game. I'm actually on. I'm actually playing right now. And yeah, I'm usually in the forums. I also just started my Twitch account, so I'm BJammin96 on Twitch. There's too many Jammins on Twitch apparently, so I couldn't get the Jammin96 everywhere. So
yeah, everywhere is tough, right? These guys have it down.
It is. These guys have it lucky, I'll tell you.
Well, that's great. And I think I heard a little birdie tell me, Ben, that you're also going to be helping Taylor Moss out with some of the Rec Poker Twitch streaming that's coming down the pipe.
That's right. I'm not sure when this is going to come out, but I think I'm up this week. He just emailed me actually about that. So I think I'm up this week too. I'm not sure if it'll be out in time for everyone to hear, but yeah, it will be on this week. So, and then hopefully once Marek is over, then I'll be in a few more times. So
yeah, fantastic. Looking forward to it. So you nailed it. Every week we get together. We pull a post from the discussion forums at rec.poker. And while we're trying to take each other's chips in the nightly home game that John Somsky sets up for us on PokerStars every night, we get together and we talk about that post. So tonight, as we are stealing each other's chips, we're talking about a post from our very own Ben Jammin here, a little bit of a follow-up from a few weeks ago, where we talked about his situation. I guess we'll pull back the curtain here. So, but this is the same Ben who won a couple satellite sweepstakes tickets to some higher stakes tournaments that he not usually used to playing. And so we did an episode talking about some of the considerations you might have, some of the ways you might change your approach, some of the options you might have going into a higher stakes poker tournament. And so we brought him on to talk a little bit about it. So Ben, I know you've got a hand we're going to talk about a little later on in the show. Mm-hmm. But first, I know you listened to the other podcast. It was too late to help you because you were already in the tourney at that point. But can you talk a little bit about how you ended up actually preparing differently for these, and if you thought that kind of stuff worked, or if there were things you would have done differently?
Well, I think I should have spent a little bit more time on deep stack play. Well, or either that, or I would have late registered all the tournaments.
Oh yeah.
Because so what I ended up doing was I ended up playing half the tournaments because I had 4 tickets. So I ended up playing the first 2, just regular, just straight registered them, bought right in, and it was long days for sure. So it was big grinds. So. I think that's what I learned the most, I would say, is learning, how to approach them as far as like late reg and stuff. And because I'd never been in a spot like that where to say, oh, the best thing to do is the late reg. You don't want to get in there with 200 big blinds and have these guys, really work over you and make bad decisions when you're super deep. You'd rather be more short so that you don't make those expensive mistakes. So
that's interesting because we did talk about that in the episode, and I wonder, can you talk a little bit about what were the kind of spots that you felt uncomfortable in? Because it's true, the bigger stack favors the more experienced player, and the mistakes, as you said, the less experienced player tends to make more expensive mistakes with big stacks. So was there a particular dynamic that made you feel like that stack wasn't your friend, or a couple factors about it, or just
I-
generally it's
It
just
was
a lot?
this may come as a surprise, but it was actually the amount of limping.
Mm.
There was a lot of limping, a lot more limping than what I would normally expect from, especially from a 215 and the 530. There was a lot of limping, and I wasn't really sure how to respond to it, especially when I would try and isolate those limpers and then have them call or have multiple callers and then have to play multi-way. Just how to approach multi-way pots when you're 200 big blinds deep can be a little bit tricky, especially when you're not sure how much of a skill edge you have against these players.
And I think that's those low SPR spots, right? Or those
Yeah.
high SPR spots,
High
rather,
SPR,
where and I think, and was your impression of these limping players that they were like donkeys that just didn't know how to play, or was it part of a balanced limping range? Hard to tell, right?
Hard to tell. I mean, you really need the numbers on these players,
Yeah.
right? And it's hard when you have it, like, because all these tournaments were, if you look, I put the post up. I mean, most of them were 30,000 entries. I think
Right.
the 530 had 12,000 entries. So, the amount of players is just huge. So you're having a hard time when you make these table changes to try and get fresh reads on players, especially when you make the table change and they're still limping.
Right.
It's not like you get to a table and all of a sudden, oh, there's guys raising and 3-betting and 4-betting 200 big blinds deep. It's still limp, and then one guy might ISO, but it still might limp around, and then it still might go multi-way with callers and stuff like that. So I think that was really the most difficult part for me, I think, was trying to navigate those spots for sure.
That's interesting. Now, John and Rob, when I hear that, what I think is that most of these players with the deep stacks were planning to limp call a lot. There was not going to be a lot of limp folding and limp raising. And what they're trying to do is just start with an open size that when they get raised, they can still call comfortably and get to the flop with a lot of speculative hands that they want to. Because that's a good reason not to open raise, to limp instead if you expect to get raised. Does that tell you, either of you, anything about it, or do you have a strategy that you might employ to combat that?
My first thought would be to do isolating a little bit tighter, and maybe to a bigger sizing.
Yep.
Because basically isolate for value instead of or raise for value instead of as a way of isolating if that's not working.
I think when you're sitting at 200 big blinds, I mean, that's a huge stack for a tournament player. So it is an uncomfortable place to be. So I think what's happening is people want to see a lot of flops, but they don't want to commit a lot of chips until they see if they hit the flop or not, right? So there's a lot of limping going on because they say, hey, if I hit a flop here, this is gonna be great. And it's only gonna cost me, one big blind to get into this pot. And if I don't hit anything, I can fold. And again, it only cost me one big blind. So I think the strategy by those players is just that. Let's see a lot of flops. Let's see if we can hit something, and let's see if we can stack somebody that has, that makes the second best hand.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And we've got a note from Kim in the chat here saying, play tighter early when stacks are deep. Yeah, that's right. And I think one of the things we talked about last episode was also being in position more with those non-premium hands, because it is going to be hard to play out of position post-flop. So
Yeah,
you said,
I think what John said is absolutely correct. If you're going to get involved and you want to isolate, you're going to have some big hands. You're not going to isolate with the kinds of hands that you might want to steal from later on. You're going to want to have a very tight range when you get involved with that many big blinds.
Especially there's quite a bit of early position limping as well. So guys limping under the gun or just off, under the gun or in that earlier position where it was like, ooh, this might get dicey. They might have a monster that they're just waiting for me to do this, and then I might get into trouble, right? So.
Yep. And did you consider in the moment just folding to those limps and just like not getting involved in the hand?
I think there was a few hands that definitely I think I would have normally, wouldn't have had an issue getting involved with. and trying to isolate a little bit more. But then I think I got a few more reads. I did get some reads in some of the tournaments, but for the most part, I think I pretty much started to stay away from it, especially with a lot of weak ace X. Like
Yeah.
even like ace 9, ace 8, and ace 7 and ace 6. Like all those offsuit, especially like suited
Oh, yeah.
is different, totally different. But like with the with those offsuited combinations, those are really tough. I think, especially deep. Especially
Yeah,
deep.
I agree. Yeah.
So I
the
think I
most-
found a lot more. I don't know if I call those nitty folds, but I found those more. I just passed on those spots where I didn't think I was going to have a skill edge post flop. Where I think if like you say, if I'm going to raise, I have to have something better than a6 offsuit or a7
Yes.
offsuit.
I might go as tight as folding ace 10, ace jack
Right.
in those situations, just because you're so deep.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get, coolered with your, you got top pair, top kicker with a jack,
Mhm.
and somebody's got queen jack, or somebody's got, maybe a jack and hits something your other card. Now you're sitting there with the ace high, and you're committing a lot of chips. I guess what I'm trying to say is you get reverse implied odds, right?
Mm.
Yes. Yep. And that's especially bad the deeper you are.
Yeah.
Yep.
Those reverse implied odds, they don't really care that much if you've got like 20 big blinds or something like that. But deep, that's where you pay for those hands.
Yeah.
Those one pair bad kicker hands. Those are you just don't want to play those hands.
Yeah, and I'm sure if I look through the hand histories, you'll see spots where early I might stab, and then I learn the players, and then you start to figure out, okay, these guys aren't probably going to fold to a c bet, on the flop. It's not the home game.
Yeah. So let's talk.
Unfortunately.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So what were a couple of the other spots where you felt like, you were out of your comfort zone, or whether it was because of the stakes or because of the play, or areas where you didn't feel like
No,
Your audio is cutting out there, Jim.
okay, I don't know if it's any better now. Try and run with it if it's not.
Yeah, no, I got you, Jim. No, I think the others where I felt uncomfortable. I think the 530, believe it or not. I actually don't think the 1K I feel like I wasn't that worried about. But for some reason, I think, and I know the reasons. I say it in my posts. But I fired at the $400 40 stack back in the summer when the WSOP was running on GG, and I got aces the first hand, and then I got 7 deuce the second hand, and I got kings, and I got it all in for like 100 big blinds, just an absolute punt against the guy who had middle set, and I didn't improve. So I had some anxiety because I had played, I'd taken a shot at something like that before. So I think for that buy-in, I was a little bit more nervous because I had actually played something like that and it hadn't gone well. The 1K I hadn't experienced, so that was just a complete unknown, and I knew that I probably wasn't going to have a good skill edge anyways. But the 530, it's more of a place where I see myself someday being like, you always, I see these big streamers playing in these tournaments, every day, and I just like, oh, I want to be that someday. I want to be playing in these $500 online tournaments. Like that would be great to have a role to be able to do that is just phenomenal. So I think for me personally, it was more of a thing where I just wanted to prove myself in that field more so than the 1K because I knew there was going to be some killers.
Yeah.
in the 1K, but in the 530, I felt like this is somewhere where I could see myself in the future. So
Nice.
yeah, I don't know. That was just kind of my thoughts on it. I don't know what you guys think about that, but
I know Rob has said before that you have to sort of take these shots every once in a while in these tournaments you want to play in to like know where you are and to get a sense of becoming more familiar with that player pool. So I think that's right, Jim.
Something funny that I was thinking about when I read Ben's post today is back in 2012, I satellited into a MSPT. It's $1,000 live tournament. And I thought I was the Jiz Nizzle, right? I thought I was the Jiz Nizzy. I don't know, whatever. I just thought I was that in a bag of chips. And so I ended up final tabling it, making my biggest cash ever. And then
Ah.
about
Wow.
a couple of years later, when I was studying poker, trying to get better and whatnot, I got into it again. And I realized how bad I was when I got into it the second time, because I knew more than I did the first time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the first time I was unconscious. I just thought I was it, right? I knew what the hell I was doing, but I really didn't. And I realized that when I gained more experience and started learning more and learning more and learning more, all of a sudden you realize where you are in that spectrum, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my poker goal these days is to just, if I'm in a tournament that matters, I don't want to be doing something for the first time. I don't want to be thinking about a strategy for the first time, a move for the first time. That's my poker goal these days. If I'm going to be in a poker tournament that means something to me, I want to be prepared enough that I feel familiar with the decisions I'm going to have to make. I feel comfortable with the stakes. I need to be able to walk away from a bad beat feeling like that's life, you know? Um, and you can't do that the first time you're playing in a tournament at a certain stake too. So I really like Rob's point on that, and kind of getting familiar with it. And it's an investment in your future too. Not only the experience of playing in the tournament, but that familiarization. The next time you do it, like you said already, it affects you, right? You had that bad experience earlier, and so that you kind of sweating that as you come into it.
Oh,
So I think
that
it's
was on my mind my first thought was when I went in that $530. I said, "Don't give me aces the first hand." I said, "I do not want to see aces the first hand." I said, "I'll take 7 deuce. I'll take 10-9 suited. I'll take any other hand. Just don't give me aces the first hand." And I know it'll all just it'll all be fine.
So as it turned out, I've got some insider information. It wasn't the first hand, but you did end up getting a pair of aces at
We
one
did.
point. And
We
why don't you
did.
talk us through that hand? Because that was
That
a
was a
good
great segue.
example. Yeah. Oh, thanks, man. Got to start doing this more regularly.
Yeah, that was slick. Yeah.
So, so tell us about this one hand, 'cause you put this in your
Right.
post as well, and I'll encourage everyone. We go through these forum posts on the show, and we talk about some of the points that get brought up in there, but it really doesn't do it justice. A lot of people contribute to these posts, and it's free to go join the Rec Poker forums. Just go to rec.poker, get a free community account, and you can join Ben and our wizards and all our members here in the post. So anyway, go check that out. There's a bunch of great responses. We don't have time to get into all of it, but Ben did outline the hand in the post here. So you look down, you've been grinding a little.
It's
You
been a
see a
long day.
pretty good, yeah. And that's the other thing, right? The structures are
Yeah,
different.
it
So
is.
it's a
Yeah.
longer tournament. You're
Mhm.
deeper for longer. Fatigue does kind of get to set in, and focus
Yeah.
and discipline is a finite resource for us. So so you look down, you see ace ace. What's going through your mind?
I just see I just see Kim in the chat. I have our entire convo about the hand here in case you forget anything. So that's a little bit of a needle, but I know Kim was watching on because I did stream this actually. So I don't know if I save this hand or not, but I do try and grab some hands occasionally that are big sweats or whatever. But yeah, that's funny, Kim. I do enjoy that. So, anyways, so we're 81 big blinds deep, and yeah, I look down and I have the ace of spades and the ace of diamonds, and we are 2 off the big blind here. So we're in kind of earlier position. This is an 8-handed table, and everyone's here, everyone's attending. So we got everyone's in their seat. So it folds to us, and I go ahead and raise to 2.2. And a lot of I'm just want to look at the stacks here. So it looks like we have 24 big blinds in the big blind. We got a big stack in the small blind, like 156 big blinds in the small blind. So quite a few chips. We get a call from, I believe that's the low jack or hijack. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. Middle position. Yeah.
Middle position. We get folds. Yeah, so we're heads up.
So you open was it 2.2 or something you said?
2.2, yeah.
2.2, and you get called in middle position. Everyone else folds. You go to the flop.
Yeah.
So, and it looks like there's quite a range of stack sizes here at the table. You've got
There is,
81. There's a monster in the small blind. The big blind short. and the middle position player had 49 big blinds. So you've got them covered. The effective stack is 49 big blinds. So it folds around, and we get to see a flop. So what's the flop, Ben?
So we have the 3 of hearts, the 10 of clubs, and the 6 of hearts. So we have a flush draw on board with 2 hearts and the 10 of clubs. 10 high board.
So before we go any further, panel, what are you thinking when you get to this? This feels like a pretty mandatory C bet to me. I don't see any shocked looks on anyone's face, so I think that's pretty uncontroversial. Maybe we can just continue right past that. Yeah. So what's the pot size at that point?
So there's 6.8, 6.9, I guess.
And what
if
was
you
your
round up.
sizing?
I choose 2.27. So I go with the small. I think I
Mhm.
could probably even in game. I think I could maybe even go a little bit smaller. Afterwards, looking at it, maybe I could even go. I can even maybe even go a little bit smaller. I don't know what your guys' thoughts on that, or if we need to nitpick that a whole lot, or
What do you guys think, panel? Robin,
Well,
John?
the middle position player should have a stronger range than and it shouldn't probably hit this hand very well. The only thing that I would worry about is potential flush draw because you got 2 hearts on the board.
2 hearts. Yeah.
So that'd be the only thing I'd be concerned about. So yeah, I think the small sizing is probably okay just because the chances of him hitting this, with a 10, a 6, or a 3 is pretty small. So you want him to call with some of those draws because that's how you're going to get your value with your aces.
Right.
I agree.
Yep,
Okay.
I like small C bets typically, particularly out of position. And again, you have to kind of, well, you don't have to. It's up to you. I like to think about having one bet size no matter what is in my hand, and so I would want to be doing a small C bet here with a wide range, and that would include aces. So
Yep, and I think I would pretty much agree with that too. Like, I think I'd be betting small here with all kinds of stuff, aces included. So,
yep. And
yeah.
Kim in the chat says that she thinks it's perfect with the stack sizes as well. We knew Kim would like it as long as it wasn't a half pot bet. So that's easy money.
Yes,
That's
It
easy
wasn't.
money right there.
We got rid of the half pot button before we played this tournament just for Kim. So it was good.
So you bet 2.3, which is functionally the same as the open size. So it's
Yeah.
not exactly a down bet, but it's not like a threatening bet. And they call.
They go ahead and call. Yeah.
So the turn comes a really fun card. Why don't you take us through the turn there?
It's the 3 of spades.
Oh,
So
good.
the board's now paired. There's a flush draw, but there's no. It's not the 10 of spades on the board. I think, but I do have the ace of spades in my hand. So, but yeah, I don't know what your guys' thoughts are now. We're out of position. We've got called, and we have aces in the spot. What do
Yeah,
you
and
guys
so the
think?
board's now 10-6-3-3 with 2
2
hearts.
Yeah.
I'm continuing here, I think, because we're ahead of all their one pair hands. They have, when they call the flop, they have a bunch of tens. They have a bunch of like overcards with backdoors. They have a bunch of flush draws. None of those hit, so I feel very confident making another bet. And this is a great example of one of those spots where you can bet and know that you don't have the nuts. Like you can make a bet expecting for the right decision to be folding to a shove or something some of the time. And this seems like that kind of spot. We talked about sizing on the flop. I like to bet smaller on the flop and bigger on the turn. There's a number of theory reasons that go into that. One of the nice things about it is that weak flop range that continued now has to get put in a tougher position, and you get to win a bigger pot when they fold because you included that flop bet that you wouldn't have gotten value for with a larger sizing.
So
Kim
what do
also
you
says she likes 65% pot here. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say 66, but what are you targeting there? I mean, what hands are you targeting? Are you betting for value, or are you trying to get him off of his flush draws and
Wait.
potential 2 pairs? What is the goal for the bet?
And I think Rob, I think you hit it right on the head when you say this, because I think this is where I got in my own head. in this spot where I was like, what? I think I thought that where I was like, what am I going for here? Like if I bet here and he raises me, how excited am I with aces in this spot with no heart? Paired board. It's a big tournament. If we get all in with this guy, we're gonna, it's gonna be a big chunk of our stack. I don't know.
Yep. It doesn't feel, and the other thing is, I mean, it's true. One pair is not typically a 3 streets of value hand. So you're not going to be able to bet 3 streets and get paid by a worse hand often. So when that's true, you kind of have to choose, is this a 1 street of value hand? Is this a 2 street of value hand? If it's 2, which are the streets that I can get the best money in? To me, it's in this case, it's the flop and the turn, because as we're seeing some notice in the chat here, I think there are a bunch of 10s there. There's pocket pairs between 7s, 8s, and 9s. They wouldn't have raised the flop. They're still paying you for value. You've lost your overcard straight draws, but you've still got the 2 hearts. And when you come to the river, that river card is going to either make the flush that you don't want to see, put an overcard out there that is going to either be bad for you or bad for your action, right? Like that's the other part of it, is that you're in this position where you don't want them to make the hand that beats you, but you also don't want them to get scared off. And you can't get value from those pocket hearts or from those flush draws on the river. You can only get them on the turn. You are going to get raised sometimes. And so then you have to decide, is this the kind of player who's going to be doing this only with value, or is it someone who's trying to get me off pocket aces here? And they exist. They're out there. There's more of them in the big tournaments than there are in the Rec Poker Nightly home game. So it's a good thing to be thinking about. That all leads me to want to see bet the turn. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'd continue on the turn.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of all of the 10 jacks, 10 queens are going to continue calling you. They aren't going anywhere, 10-9 even. And you might even get a call out of something like a 6-7 that would just think you were continuing with ace king. So I think there's plenty of value to be had here. And you don't want to give them the flush draw for free if that's what they're on. Or a chance to get 2 pair for that matter.
Right.
And a part of that is, it's built into that smaller bet on the flop too. Like you chose that smaller sizing intentionally to allow them to continue with some weak holdings. And so they did. So you can still get some value from them. Or you can fold out some of those hands that have some equity against you. I think actually the turn pairing the board really helps you out in that case, because
that's a really good card. Yeah.
Now you're counterfeiting their other 2 pair combos, and it's just less likely. I mean, yeah, if they have a 3, then now you're crushed. But it really does. I think it actually favors you.
Yeah, and we don't have the for everyone who's just listening, I don't have the ace of hearts in my hand here. I have the ace of diamonds and the ace of spades, just to make sure that we're all good there. But.
So you check, and I don't think
I check.
I don't think it's like, I'm not sure it's necessarily like a hanging offense.
Yeah, and I guess that's why we have the discussion on, that's why we have the discussion there, so in depth about whether I should bet, what I should bet on the turn, or if I'm going to bet, or if it's a mistake, to not bet. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
I feel like I don't know if looking at it now, it feels like I should have bet the turn, and it was a mistake. But I don't know what you guys.
Well, the way I look at it is in a hand like this where you're going for value. Jim said it very well, that you're not going to get value on the river. You're only going to get value on the turn from those types of hands that you expect to get value from. Now, obviously, if he has a 3, you're already crushed. But if he has a 10, like John was saying, a 10 queen, 10 jack type hand, maybe a couple hearts, you're going to get some value that you're not going to be able to get on the river. Yeah. So on this type of hand, I would probably bet the turn. There's other hands where you might be in a more condensed range where you might want to check the turn and try to see a cheap river, and just and hopefully be able to take advantage of a bluff or something on his part. But in this case, we're so strong. We're at the upper part of our range. I mean, we got the upper part of our range, period. This is where you try to get your value when you can.
Right.
Yep, I agree. And Kim says it is a hanging offense. Take you to the gallows. We could.
I've seen that. Yeah, that's what I was laughing about. Yeah.
But okay, so as played, and I think I guess the last point on that is that sometimes you're going to bet the turn, they're going to call, and the heart's going to come, and you're going to feel stupid about bloating the pot out of position. But you just you have to feel stupid sometimes, because sometimes things aren't going to go the way you want them to go. But that doesn't mean it's not the right decision in the big picture. It's just every decision has this much of it where things go your way and this much of it where things don't go your way. You don't get to choose how that's going to go. You just make the right decision the most. I know.
Yeah, what's funny about that, Jim, is if you bet 65% of the pot, you're taking his odds away of chasing that flush draw.
Yeah.
So if he calls that and hits his flush, well, he made a mistake.
I love that.
Right, he made a mistake by calling that, and got lucky.
Yep, that's a great point. And that's what poker is, right? Poker is about forcing other people to make mistakes.
Exactly.
More mistakes than you make.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that, in my opinion, is with like bet sizing. Bet sizing is a great way to make people make mistakes. So yeah, and Kim puts in the chat here that also when hearts miss, you can check river to induce a bluff. And yeah, that's a great point. You're not going to get that value otherwise. Okay, so check. Time for the river. Another exciting card. This one's the 6 of clubs. So the board is 10, 6, 6, 3, 3, 2 hearts. And there are about 11 and a half big blinds in the pot. What are you thinking here? And just actually, before you even mentioned Ben, what do you think, panel? You're in this spot. As played, turn went check. The board is double paired with a 10 open. What are you thinking here?
Well, I'm thinking that this guy did not call the pre-flop with a 6 or a 3 in his hand.
Feels unlikely. I'm with you.
It feels unlikely. So he's looking at it that he's got a 10. If he's got a 10, then he's feeling pretty good because he's got a bigger 2 pair than the board. A lot of times in these situations, an ace is all you need, because if somebody has an ace king, ace queen type hand, they're going to feel pretty comfortable that, well, you don't have a 6 or a 3. So, my ace is usually the winning hand in this situation because you got 2 pairs on the board. So I would probably check and call any bet.
Yeah, you do get some value from. So I always think about in these moments, you don't really have to worry about how he's going to play hands like ace 10, or like the hands that he's going to put a bet in no matter what. That's not where you should be thinking about your target here. You got to think about, how am I going to get money in the pot most often from those cusp hands? And some of them will call a bet that you make, and some of them will not call that bet, but they'll bluff if you check. So you kind of have to do some mental math in the moment, and it's something you have to drill yourself off the felt, counting combos and hand ranging, and give yourself a real internalized idea of how many combos of value versus how many combos of bluff could they have here. How likely is this player to pull the trigger on a bluff on a double pair board like this? And then, I mean, yeah, Rob nails it. You do get more weak hands putting money in the pot as a bluff than as a call. So that's the theory there. I mean, I'm still kind of tempted to bet, I think, just because as played, we've kind of weakened our range here, right? Because we haven't, when we check the turn and then nothing scary comes in. I mean, it still kind of feels like a 1 pair hand though. Like now I think the problem is when we bet here, it's like, oh, okay, the hearts didn't come in, I can bet. And that just tells people that you have kind of one of those middling strength hands.
The only issue I have with betting here is because we showed weakness on the turn. It really, I don't know. It makes it questionable. I guess you could have played a 6 that way, but it's unlikely you have many 6s opening from early position. And by betting, you are giving them the hammer to really take it away from you. And so I would probably check because I want to get value from flush draws that are willing to bluff at it. You are missing a little bit of value from 10s because it's likely a 10 will still call you on this particular board. But I would probably, I know if I had bet the turn, I would check the river here.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's influencing my decision, but it still feels like I want to check the river here.
And this is a good example of that spot where this is a 2 streets of value hand, and we kind of we still want to get that second street of value, but we didn't get it on the turn. And I think we could comfortably, I think we can more comfortably bet it on the turn. I think now it just gives them, it makes them more likely to raise as a bluff. I think that's part of the problem. When you check the turn, you weaken your range, so you make yourself a more tempting bluffing target. And now you have to actually like make some hard decisions if you bet and get raised, because you've allowed them to kind of bluff you a little bit. If you check and call, your range is even weaker. They're bluffing even more, and it feels like that's a better way to get the bad money in.
Right.
So yeah, I think it plays better as a check call.
So like if we check here and he goes, let's say he goes for an overbet. Let's say he goes for 1.5x on the river here when there's 11. So I don't know how much that would be.
Yeah, like 17 big blinds or something.
17, yeah.
17 or 18.
17 or 18 here on the river. What do you guys think then if we check?
So that would leave you with what, about 50 big blinds after the hand?
Yeah, I'm worried about if I check here, I'm just worried about making a quick decision on the river and just flipping a chip in and not thinking about what he has that he bluffs with, I guess. Is kind of where I'm at with that.
Well, I think with the action that we take, I think we have to call just about any bet he makes at this point.
Right.
Because we've given him every opportunity to bluff at this hand. And the only cards that beat us is if he happens to have a 6, a 3, or pocket 10s. That's the only things that could beat us. And he slow played his pocket 10s pretty well, if that's what he had.
Yeah,
that's true.
That is true. Yeah.
So you gotta, if you're gonna check here, you've got to call any bet.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and
I think that's what I would have done if I would have checked. I think I feel like I would have just snap called if I would have checked here for sure. Like I would have just flipped a chip in and not to pun, just flip a chip in.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, the overbet, I would think hard about it. I'd probably end up calling, but if he does like a double pot size overbet, I might very well fold to that because it doesn't seem like that's a very good bluff.
Yeah,
but it is a good value bet. The thing is you didn't represent that much strength, so I wouldn't think that. Although I've seen people just do crazy overbets because they're not going to get called that often, but when they do, it's a gold mine.
Yeah,
and I think as played, I have to believe that he bets some of his stronger hands on the turn when you check to him, because if he's in position on the turn with a 10 or trips with a flush draw out there, I'd be betting the turn when checked to. So I think you can eliminate some of the highest value hands. He could still check behind with like a 6, which pairs on the river. So I think most of the hands that beat you at this point are hands with a 6 in them. I don't see him doing pocket 10s this way. I don't see him doing a 3 this way. I just don't. I mean,
Yeah. I
not
think we
not
can
very
take pocket
commonly
tens. I think we
anyway.
can actually take pocket tens out just based on the way it played, I think.
Yep.
Because I really think that it's even for a really good player, it's hard to check. I don't even think you should check
No,
there
not
when
at
you
that stack depth. I think you got to
No,
bet
I
in
think
on
I
the
mean
turn.
you gotta bet, right? So I think we can reasonably take out tens out of the range. I don't know if that's called being capped or not, if I'm using that correctly. Is that
Yep.
the correct term? Yeah.
Yep. And now we're getting some comments in the chat about like 5-6 suited, 7-6 suited. Yep, I agree. I think those are some hands that they call within position. They call the flop with one pair. They check behind with second pair and some showdown value, and then they get lucky on the river. So I think if I had to guess, I'd say if you lost this hand, they had a 6 in it. And if you won this hand, they had a 10. But why don't you
Hashtag
tell us?
results.
Why don't you tell us? Why don't you tell us what happens here on the river?
So yeah, so we go ahead and we bet small. We go
Okay.
for I believe I hit the third pot button, but we go for 3.7. I believe it's 3.8, 3.7
Yep.
on the river, big blinds, and there's 11 and a half in the pot.
Okay.
We'll say.
So that's very callable, right? Like I think you're.
I'm praying he has a 10.
Yeah, that's it. It feels like you're value
Yeah.
targeting a 10, maybe even 7s through 9s might call, but I don't know, probably not. Like, what are they putting you on at this point?
Or any ace, king, ace king, ace queen, ace jack.
That's a good point, Rob.
9, because again, there's 2 pair on the board.
Yep.
Right.
So ace is a kicker.
Yep, that's going to be good sometimes. Sometimes when Ben's bluffing, and Ben should be bluffing here sometimes because the opponent didn't bet the turn when they got checked to. So you can see the ripple effects of checking that turn. Like it really affects the dynamic on the river now.
And I actually bluffed into this player later in the tournament on a double paired board when I had queen high. So and I did the exact same thing. I used a small sizing and it was the exact same player. And I had queen 10 of spades and it was like a double paired board. And we made a small, super tiny bet on the river, just like this, just like almost in the same spot. I think the stack sizes were pretty similar as well. But
and how did they respond?
They folded.
All right, that's good. So they're paying attention. Yeah, that's interesting. So they're not just inelastic to your sizing. Yeah. Okay, so you make the small bet, and they make a raise.
Yep, they go to 16.8 here on the river.
So it's a little over 4 times your bet, but it's not actually that big a raise relative to the pot. Interestingly, I think. So it's not a overbet shove go away raise. It looks like it has some fold equity. I think they could do this with a pretty balanced range. So after you throw up in your mouth, what is the next thing that happens here? So what are you thinking when you see that river raise?
I really, really, really wish I could find the fold button in this spot. But
I wouldn't somebody put in the chat, quad sixes. I would think that you'd hear from that when they had a full house on the turn.
Right.
Because they turned a full house. So I think 5, 6, 6, 7 is the type of hand that is going to do that beats you at this point in time.
Yeah. And then I noticed in the chat there's also some, I think Kim said 6s and 3s as well. Are also which are more, I feel like are more in the range than 10s, because I think 10s probably goes for a little bit more value, and with quads it's harder to get value where you block some of the 3 and the 6x if you do have 6s or 3s.
So can anyone come up with are there some good bluffing candidates that this player could have here?
That's what I want to know.
I mean, they still could do. I think because the board's double paired. Interestingly, I don't think that takes their heart combos out of play as a raise, as a bluff here. Obviously, it's purely a bluff. Like they're not trying to realize any equity or anything like that. But they're not really afraid of the paired board as much because it's not like an earlier street where they're trying to make their flush and they care about getting counterfeit by it or anything. So and you're not likely to have very many 6s or 3s in your range either. So it's actually a pretty good river for them to be making you afraid. When you look at the combos and do some hand ranging, again, it's not really smack in their value range either, as we've talked about, but I do think they have more 6s there than you do. So
did they have very many overpairs the way it was played? Like
over the
jacks,
10
queens?
I don't think so. I thought about that too.
Maybe a lot of those they would have 3-bet you pre-flop.
Yeah, 3-bet pre, and then
yeah.
I don't know if because they're essentially turning their hand into a bluff, right? If they have jacks, I don't know if they're trying to bluff there, or if they're trying to get value, right? If they're raising us on the river.
Yeah. Well, so let's say they had something like ace 10. Would they value bet that? Would they value 3-bet or re-raise you?
On the river, yeah.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Because I don't think they're getting called by anything worse.
Not only that, but you probably would have heard from them on the turn. When you check the turn, that 10 is going to probably bet. Yeah. I'm thinking the only type of bluff that you're going to find out there is maybe an ace 9 of hearts.
Yep.
Or an ace 8 of hearts.
Where
they got the ace. They've got that ace, so they're thinking that they're going to try to get you off a chop.
Yep.
Because you started the hand with ace king, ace queen type of thing. You raised pre-flop. They called with a suited ace 8, ace 9, something like that. So they had the flush draw all the way, and now the double paired board, their ace is the kicker. That's you see that a lot where you end up going to the showdown. You both have an ace, and you just chop the pot. So he's trying to take you off a chop. That would be the only type of hands that I would see that would be potentially a bluff, that they're just trying to take you off the chop.
And that will happen more often at these upper tournaments. Like, there's not a lot of people in the lower cases trying to bluff you off a chop. That's just not a strategy that most recreational players employ. So it's something that you wouldn't be used to that will happen more there.
Now, this is the 1K, mind you. So this is a $1,000 buy-in. It's online as well. So I don't know. We could make a case for saying that maybe there's a few less recreationals that play. But I mean, it is.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah,
big Sunday guarantee. Big Sunday guarantee. There's still going to be plenty of deep pockets around. So
yep, that's right.
That's what makes Sunday. That's what makes Sundays so great.
You said it, buddy. All right. So as played, we bet. They make the raise. Substantial, but not an outlandish.
Yep.
And drum roll, please, Ben.
Couldn't
what
find
happened?
Couldn't find the fold button, folks. Couldn't find the fold there. I couldn't let I had too much. I couldn't let it go. I couldn't find a fold, and I had the reaction. I mean, I had the reaction. I remember throwing my head back and going like this, and kind of going, because I was on lunch break actually when this hand came up, because I remember this hand so well. I had my mic off, and I remember kind of throwing my hands up and kind of sitting back in the chair, and then just hitting the call button. But they ended up having the 5-6, the 5-6.
Yeah.
And they rivered the 6.
Brutal.
So they made the full house on the river there. So
brutal.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's take a little minute here. I want to talk. I want to hear from our friend Jonathan Little, and then we'll come back and close this hand out.
Have you ever wondered whether you should call a preflop raise or 3-bet instead? What do you do when you have a flush draw? Do you raise it, or do you just call? What do you do with ace-king when you miss the flop? Are you tired of guessing about what the right play is with your particular hand? Well, my name is Jonathan Little, and I am a 2-time World Poker Tour champion and creator of PokerCoaching.com, where we offer over 1,000 interactive hand quizzes where you play a hand and then get real-time feedback from our world-class pros. Don't guess and don't stress. Just register for your free account at PokerCoaching.com/recpoker right now.
Thank you, Jonathan Little, for that inspiring word. He's so kind to just come and hang out with us while we do these and then just pop in to do the announcent and get back. He's such a busy guy. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. He
Well, and
takes that
so
time.
consistent too.
Oh, yeah. He knows how
No.
to land those marks.
Yeah, I
So,
do.
Ben-
I enjoy his I enjoy his podcasts there, guys, too. I just want to stick that. I do enjoy Jonathan Little. He's great. He's great for the poker community.
He is, yeah, very generous
Yep.
with his
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, he is.
Pokercoaching.com has a bunch
Very
of
friendly
great
on
stuff
Twitter
there
as
too.
well.
He's
He's always taking time on Twitter. So yeah, definitely a good follow on Twitter, Jonathan Little. So
Jammin 96 approved.
And I don't know if this will make you feel better or worse, but I don't think I would have been able to get away from that hand either. So I would not have found the fold.
Yeah.
And I would have been saying to myself, I'm just not good enough to fold this as I was making the call.
That's why I play $20 ABI tournaments online.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, it feels like pretty small mistakes though, to be honest with you. Like we're talking about this specifically so we can give you some constructive feedback, and you can't get that if you do everything right. But all things being said, I wouldn't say that you butchered anything there, and I like our conversation about if it's a 2-street of value hand, like choosing which streets it's going to be, getting value from those flush combos on the turn that you can't get on the river. We're getting some nice comments here in the chat. That's right. We know we've reached the next level. When we can fold those big hands.
Those big hands.
It's true. It's if you could, I don't know. One mistake that recreational players like us often make is just not folding big pairs. We have a hard time folding big pairs. We feel like we're entitled to win the hand. We project some sneaky, bluffy lines on opponents because we want it to be true, right? But often it's a one-pair hand.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing a review with a coaching client this week, and we were looking at one of the filters on Poker Tracker 4, one of the reports that shows the losing hands at showdown. And if you haven't looked at that, if anyone in the audience has Poker Tracker 4, go over to reports and losing hands at showdown. Take a peek at how large a proportion of the losing hands at showdown are made up with one pair hands. One pair is a losing hand if you're playing it for more than 10 big blinds. So it's just one of those things where you got to treat it like a bluff catcher, even though it's pretty. If you're facing aggression, you're probably just not good.
Yeah,
and you're not good enough.
If you play PLO, one pair of hands are definitely no good. I just started playing PLO here a couple months ago, so yeah.
Nice. Well, look out for next month's mixed game. You're gonna be out. One of the people that takes the crown away from Mike Patrick.
Man. I got to. That guy is just unreal in the mixed games. He is really good. Yeah. I've chatted with him. He's a really nice guy too. So yeah, I chatted him up a little bit because I was looking for some PLO advice. So
nice. Yeah. Speaking of people that are free with their time. Yeah. Another good Canuckian, one of the Rec Poker Canada members. So I'd like to thank Ben and Rob and John and of course Doug and Kim and Stu and William for joining us in the chat here and sharing all these wonderful thoughts. I'd encourage everyone, go to rec.poker and get a free community account. If you've got a concept or a hand or something you'd like to talk about, drop it in the forums there, and maybe we'll bring you on to come bring it on the air with us next week. So Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, website AMP. Thank you so much for making this all happen, and we'll see you next week.